10.222020. Welcome to Star Trek Discovery Pod, a kind of smart, kind of funny podcast about new Star Trek and beyond. I'm your reluctant captain, Mike Garcia. With me on the view screen, we have
Mariah Gossett,
Clyde Haynes,
and Grant Davis.
We're back covering Discovery Season 3. On this live pod, we'll be reviewing and breaking down Episode 2 of Season 3, Far From Home. And if nobody's got a Spider-Man joke, I'll move on.
Webs. Nope, I don't.
Nope, none.
Crash and burn.
I mean, you should have one, Grant. I mean, there's like a Spider-Man mask directly behind your head.
I know. Dropping the ball.
Aren't they doing a movie with all of the recent Spider-Mans all together? I saw that announcement.
It seems like they're going to do some sort of multiverse thing.
Yeah, that's
again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, wrong show. Wrong
show. Before we dive into our review of Season 3, Episode 2 of Discovery, Mariah, can you tell everyone how they can support the podcast?
Yes. So if you are watching us live on YouTube, that is great. We appreciate it. But the other thing you can make sure you've done is subscribe to the audio version of this podcast. We are available in Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If there is a way to leave us a review on that site, do that too. We would appreciate it. And you can find links to all of our subscription channels at StarTrekPod.co.
Following on the heels of that, I want to remind you guys that you can help support this little podcast venture of ours by going to patreon.com/StarTrekPod. There you can make your per episode pledge. What does that mean? That means that you say, hey guys, I like the cut of your jib. I want to give you $2 an episode. We post probably about four episodes a month, so that you're looking at like what, $8 a month. And in exchange, you get access to our exclusive Slack channel, which is just this group forum where you can join and chat with other Trekkies that all also like our podcast and love Trek. Come chat with them, and we also try and do a little bonus exclusive content just for y'all, just for you guys. We just spoke about the movie Star Trek Beyond in a Patreon exclusive, and that wrapped up our review of the Kelvin universe. Oh, hey, big screen, big time me now. And we would love to have you guys be able to listen to that, join everyone else on the Slack channel, and help support us because we need your money. I don't know what to say there.
Money, please.
Money, please. Anyway, that is patreon.com/StarTrekPod. Thank you for all of your support.
I gotta agree with Grant on that. You know, the Slack channel is great. I love the fact that we can talk to each other, just like, you know, every Thursday night we get to come here and talk about Trek live with all of you. So, you know, if you are watching us live, if you're watching us on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitch, wherever you're watching us, what's fun about talking to us live is that you can participate in the conversation. So if you type in capital P, capital O, capital D into the chat, we will take a look at what you're saying, and we might even read it live on the episode toward the later end of the episode. So you can participate with us in the community live. You're so distracting, Grant.
So many snacks.
I'm pouring beer all over myself, eating M&Ms here. Yeah.
Good job.
Yes, and I want to talk to all the new viewers and listeners. Thank you so much for joining us on the pod. I thought I'd just take a sec to let you know just what we do on this podcast, because
you know what we do.
I'm trying to frame what we're going to do from now on.
This is a message for us. Okay, got it.
Okay, listening.
So yeah, we try to do something a little different, a little unique on this pod. There's a lot of hate going around in the Star Trek community, I've noticed, but we're not haters. We're not trolls. Our agenda is not to hate on new Star Trek like a lot of other unhappy fucks on the internet. We did not go through the trouble of starting this pod to like rile up the worst part of the fan base and like monetize their hate, fear, insecurity, and tiny egos. That being said, we are Trek fans, but we're also not just here to fawn over every episode of Star Trek or flatter the creators of New Trek. Maybe Grant is. What we offer is a fun, positive discussion and criticism, even celebration of Trek, but it's always honest. And that's what's important to us, being honest on the pod. We love Star Trek. We're fans. We're here to celebrate Trek in a genuine way, and we're super happy you decided to join us. That sound good?
Here, here.
Hurrah!
All right. You ready, Bobcats?
I'm not on enough drugs for that.
Nope.
It's time to dive into Star Trek Discovery Season 3, Episode 2, Far From Home, not a Spider-Man movie. Just like the premiere, this ep was written by Michelle Paradise. She's a showrunner now, right?
Mhm.
She's
Co-showrunner, yeah.
co-showrunner. And Jenny Lumet and the big man Alex Kurtzman, directed by Olatunde Osunsanmi. This is the one in which we catch up with the rest of the disco crew after they cross the time wake. Okay. As you might know, this is Star Trek Discovery Pod, so we don't do hot takes.
No.
We do hot breaks.
Hot breaks.
Nice.
Woo.
All right. I want to hear Clyde. What you think about this episode, Clyde?
As much as I loved last week's episode, I thought this one was good, not necessarily great. But I thought it was I'll call it a bridge episode. I think to get to what this season is going to be about, we needed to understand what the crew was doing and kind of the journey that they went on. I think it was interesting that we got to see some tension between Saru and Giorgio, which, I mean, can you have two, we'll call them captains in air quotes, that are as opposite as those two are? And I think we got introduced to a new big bad that was a little frustrating. I'm like, you've got this big bad. Kill them early and save yourself the headache. So that was
recurring character.
Yeah, so that's gonna be fun. But no, I thought it was a good episode. I was interested in seeing some of the dynamics. And Jet Reno was hysterical in every single scene. So I'm gonna enjoy the play between Jet and Stamets all season. So I did think I felt like I missed something. This transition from Culbert to being, I need some space, to, oh, I'm so in love with you, Stamets, was like,
Trauma.
When did that happen?
did I
Trauma.
miss something? I mean, I was like, okay.
Worked for me.
I'm of course, but no. All in all, I thought it was a really good episode. But it just makes me want to see more.
Agreed.
All right. Who's next?
Mike, you wanna go?
Yeah. I agree with Clyde. I like this episode a lot. I liked it more than the premiere. This show clearly benefits from this strong ensemble cast of really great actors, and Disco just hums and zips along with confidence when we're getting character-based A stories, B stories, and C stories that are thematically connected and each, in their own unique way, feed into the overall story of the season. And that's what they delivered in this episode. Like, it felt rich. Like, the pacing was perfect. The tone was right where it should be. Not grim dark, but there were real stakes and threats. Not too jokey and light, but there was really good humor throughout the entire hour. This is Discovery running on all cylinders. There are multiple problems for our crew to solve, and they go to work. Like, they're lost, they're bruised, they're grounded physically, psychologically, in many different ways, but they persevere, they get the job done. They reminded us about the positive ideals and the dignity of Starfleet and the Federation, not by telling us about it like Michael Burnham did last week, but by acting it out, by acting like Starfleet, acting like Federation. And it was just solid. I found it to be it was really inspirational and fun. More like this, please. More. Yeah, I'm super excited. It was great. Mariah, I want to hear from you.
Yeah, I also really love this episode. Agree with a lot of the things y'all have already said. I thought fine anytime we get to see Michelle Yeoh just like kicking butt is a good episode in my mind. I love that she was, kicking around Leland around the ship, literally, on her boots. And yeah, there was so much I loved about it. I thought it was very reminiscent of the original series in many ways. And I know, like, I think now with The Mandalorian being out, everyone's like, oh, space westerns, it's Star Wars, and now Star Trek is like a space western. Just saying, the original series was marketed as a space western.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is truly going back to its roots. And not that there's anything wrong if you like the other Star franchise. But this episode, like when they're going through the wormhole, there's like references back to the original movies and the way that they're like moving and frozen and the imagery there. And so I thought there was just a lot of smart layers of new storytelling techniques that we get in New Trek while honoring and referencing the fact that this crew is coming from the time period of the original series, like before the original series. And so I thought that was very smart. And yeah, we get a whole Tilly episode. What's not to love about this episode? We get to see Tilly really coming into her own and having this great relationship with Saru. I think some really interesting things have been set up for the rest of the season as far as like interpersonal relationships we're going to get to see. Yeah, I just loved it. We got to see, Stamets and Culbert kiss again on screen all the time. Give it to me more. I want it all. And we get to see Tilly try to drop an F-bomb, and in true Tilly style, she doesn't get to do it. And then Jet Reno, just MVP of the episode. Every time she's on screen, I just laugh. So great episode overall.
Grant Davis.
I mean, I'm right there with you guys. This is such a fun episode. The entire way through it, the whole crew being back together, the crash and the ship being in dire straits, being eaten by parasitic ice, the jockeying for power between Saru, who's trying to assert, hey, I am commander, and Georgiou, who's like, we need someone who has might and authority and a certain wrath about her to kind of step in. I thought it was great because, everyone else is kind of paying deference to Saru. They recognize, like, you're the top dog. But there was almost this point, I thought, at least for the audience, of kind of watching along and going, is she making a play for power? Is she going to get that power? Are people going to, in this future world, going to need what she brings to the table? And I mean, that's just one part of this. I'm supposed to just give an overall review right here, I guess, hot freak. But it was just so fun seeing all of them back together. I completely agree. I liked the first episode, but I do recognize that there is something missing in not having the rest of the squad here. And how everyone played off of each other, I thought the writing was really tight. The cinematography was fantastic. There were some really cool, like, long extended tracking shots that were just like, ooh, I like what they're doing here. In a way, they disorient me, and that's kind of what I'm supposed to feel at this moment. It's all just really fun. This is a fun episode, and I'm so on board for where it ended and where we're going for the rest of the season.
Hey, Grant, you mentioned some of the shots, and that scene with Stamets coming out of the coma was absolutely brilliant to me.
The upside down, and then
well, not just that, but him being in that room all alone.
The sound design was dope.
It was incredible. And then as he's coming into focus, right, and as he's coming out of the coma, he's in a room filled, like it's a trauma ward.
Right.
And so just the way they shot that, the way they brought you into that, I was just like, wow. Like it was so just brilliantly done.
That scene, and then the other scene where Culbert enters into the hallway after Detmer leaves, and he's realizing there's something off about her, but he can't quite place it.
Yeah.
And the shot like spins around, tracking her back down the hallway as she's leaving, and everyone else moving through the hallway. What a great shot.
Yeah, I think last week we got a lot of like kind of long, kind of artsy, labored shots at the beginning of Michael picking herself
Mhm.
back up after like crashing. And it just kind of threw the pacing off, and it felt like this took a, for me anyway, it felt like it took a while for the episode to get going because we were getting kind of these very specific um cinematic shots of her dealing with her situation. Um, they did that here in this episode. Everybody pretty much got a nice hero shot or hero moment or something specific, like Stamets waking up. Even when Saru and Tilly, we got kind of like a getting their gear on and getting ready to go kind of hero shots from them as well. And a lot of characters got little shots, cinematic, overly cinematic, dramatic shots in this episode that looked great, but they didn't feel labored. I thought they were nice and brisk, and they reminded us, hey, this is your crew. These are the people you like. They're back, and we're going to hit the ground running. And it was badass.
Yeah.
On that note, and I know we kind of touched on this a little bit, but did you all think this episode kind of worked better as an introduction to the season and to the new world that we're looking at here?
I know you didn't like that first episode, but I really did.
I
So-
liked it, but I had issues with it, sure.
But I think, Mike, some of the things that have been said tonight already make me understand what you were feeling last week, right? Last week, I thought was a great episode. I really did. And I thought it was a wonderful episode that showcased Shaniqua Martin Green's really her ability. The thing is, it was very different from the ensemble Star Trek show that we were looking at. It was really about her. It almost would. It's one of those episodes you would expect if we were watching TNG, that comes in the middle of the season, right? Like in the middle of like the third season, where we're watching like, it's one of those episodes where we're watching Picard and Vosh go off on an exploration, right? It's so singular perspective. And so I can see why it was so different, but I thought it was great. And I thought that what they were looking to do in the premiere was to take one person and show us in detail what the world was like. So we got a chance to see that there's no dilithium crystals, right? We got a chance to see that everything that we kind of know is thrown out the window. We are now literally back in the Wild Wild West, right? Where you've got a market and all this other stuff. Whereas this episode took us through what happened to that ensemble, right? And introduced the ensemble to this world. So I feel like even though this probably should have been part 2, I get why they call the first episode part 1, and this is really maybe there's a part 2 later, because who knows the hell what the writers are doing. But I do think if you put them together, you get the complete picture, and I don't know that they work without each other.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree with you, Clyde. I almost view these as a part 1 and 2 in my mind, as like the full story. Because to me, the ending of the premiere episode of this season was sort of like the midpoint of Act 2, right? Like we get the midpoint of Act 2 if we thought of this as like a hero's journey sort of story structure, and then we essentially get to that point where the team up has to happen, which is what usually occurs in Act 2, right? You go to see the Oracle or the goddess, and that is like where you get all of your information. And we needed Burnham to sort of bring us there and give us the backstory. And I think having a knowledge of what this future is like was helpful in watching this particular episode, because you get to get excited as Tilly is uncovering the puzzle because you know something that she doesn't know. And I think a lot of times that's really successful writing, because your audience feels like they're in on something. And so they have like a vested interest in these characters as they're moving forward. So I thought it was a smart way to pivot it. Like, again, I probably would have liked to have seen like the very beginning of this episode at the very end of the last episode. Or something like Burnham gets the like a signal pops up, like something along those lines. But it seems like we're gonna get that montage, I think, the next episode of her sort of doing things over the next year and explaining what's been going on.
We're getting that brand new hair
Yes.
hairstyle.
1 year of hair growth. That's what we're gonna get.
1 year, 4 feet of new hair.
I mean, we don't know what hair care products, in the 33rd century is. We don't know what the hair care products are.
We don't. We do know that apparently bartenders are still having to constantly just wipe off tables and clean cups. Even in the future, bartenders are old-timey bartenders.
It's funny you mentioned that. It's funny where the term space western has come up, because that bar literally had saloon doors.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like, they kind of beamed into the bar, but then they still had to open the saloon doors.
I mean,
so great.
What was it? Cal literally just created this replica, this tool. It was like, it's really
cool.
easy. But yet you've got wooden bars and saloon doors. Like, it's kind of like, wouldn't your super sci-fi futuristic bar be a little bit more high tech than that?
Going back to a little bit to what you guys were talking about, though, as far as the 2 episodes, the 2-episode intro, I agree, Mariah. I think it's acting as a 2-parter, and I think it was a really smart choice to have Olatunde Osunsame direct both of them, because they both just definitely have this very similar visual style that links them together. But we've already hit on this a few times, the mystery of the naming of the episode. That first episode being That Hope Is You Part 1, and then this one just being called Far From Home. They don't seem to link together. What I think is interesting is Olatunde is going to be directing the finale of this season as well, and currently it's called Outside. But I wonder if they might instead have this kind of plan to rename it before it comes out to be the Part 2. That kind of is The Hope Is You intro and end cap. And in that regard, if we look at this as a whole season, it may make more sense about this idea of Burnham's journey from the beginning to her being this beginning spark of hope, and what that kind of blossoms into. Furthermore, I would like to just point out, I bet this does a better job than Star Wars did with their hope.
And Grant, like I said, who the hell knows what the writers are doing?
Talking about episode titles, just real quick, a quick sidebar. There is an episode in this season that is titled, it comes in the middle of the season, Unification Part 3. And Unifications Part 1 and 2 were TNG episodes.
Whoa.
Yeah. And that was an arc in which Picard and Spock worked together to try and reunify the Romulans and the Vulcans with the Federation. And it didn't quite work out so great. But Unification Part 3 is going to be in Discovery. So I think we're going to see some Romulans and some Vulcans pretty soon.
Yeah. I've seen some internet talk about how the Romulans were one of the few warp-capable species that don't need dilithium in order to achieve warp capabilities. And so everyone was just like, the Romulans should be sort of dominating space at this point, if that is true. So perhaps this has something to do with that.
Yeah, they fuel their ships with Romulan ale, right?
Yep, exactly. Yep.
So can we talk a little bit about Giorgio and Saru and their relationship here?
Yeah. Are we going to also bring up Linus?
And Linus? What's going on with him and his magic? Do you think his eyes could see all the way to the bar? And he was like, oh, yeah, we're about that bar. That's where you need to go.
I'm just happy he's not sneezing. He's over that cold. I mean,
the cold.
Feeling better.
It really seemed like she was coming on to him. So I don't know if she had some more physical needs after that lashing she had with
wow.
At this point, she just comes on to everybody, but she definitely wanted to use those peepers for something. Yeah.
Binoculars, just look over here.
It was, I mean, pretty.
Yeah,
we can just say it was just simply, track them, and I'm going to follow them, and I'm going to,
Right. Yeah. I'm assuming she was flirting her way to get something she wanted, but it came off very sexually tension in the hallway.
Yes. What did you guys think about the tension between Saru sticking to his Federation ideals all throughout this episode, despite what he went through, and Giorgio just using her shoot first and ask questions style, ask questions later style?
It felt to me as though I guess we're gonna just keep on this theme for a while. We're in this saloon. It feels like a Western. Giorgio is acting as though she's in a Western, right? Hey, everybody's got a gun. You got to bring your gun. Saru is acting like he's in the future. And so I'm looking and going, maybe there's a compromise here. Maybe what we're looking at is they'll help each other find a middle ground. But he's so steadfast and no, we're going to be this. And I can see that he's trying to almost single-handedly bring back the Federation. But I stand by my earlier point. You had the big bad right there, right? You could have ended all the drama that is coming. And you said, no, by me sparing his life, it'll be okay. Newsflash.
They just
didn't
killed a
find
bunch
that-
of other people in the saloon.
Exactly. You killed a whole bunch of people, but you're going to let him go.
Giorgio snapped a dude's neck with her thighs.
Oh, that was awesome too.
It's so
and a little
good.
like, woohoo, yeah.
I know.
Girl. I mean,
I was like, I wouldn't be mad about being that face.
Okay.
I definitely like.
I don't even know how to come out of that.
I
You're
definitely
welcome.
like the jockeying for power going on between them, and I it has deeper roots when you consider that this Giorgio is the mirror versus Giorgio, who looks at Saru as food, right?
Lunch.
he is a fear-based organism as far as she knows, because they were unfamiliar with the puberty process or whatever it was called. So she can immediately recognize that the Kelpians that she's familiar with are not going to be capable of handling the stress of the situation they're in. Her stepping in and challenging him kind of pushes him to have to recognize and really put his foot down and make decisions. He made mistakes. He should not have gone to that saloon just with Tilly. I don't know if they would have walked out of that situation had it not been for her having his back there. But I thought, what's interesting, Clyde, is you're calling that guy the big bad, but clearly she's the bigger bad in that room.
Oh yeah.
She's
When she walked
always
in there,
the
I was
bigger
like,
bad.
those guys are fucked.
Bye-bye.
She's going to destroy them. In fact, I was surprised that the writing would even allow her to have gotten shot at all, stunned.
Because she
in the
likes
torture
it.
thing.
Oh, she
Yeah,
definitely
but
She
likes
can
it.
take it.
That thing was a murder gun on the first guy.
Well, you
It could've
gotta
just
hold
been
it
a
in
murder
there.
gun.
See, that was him underestimating Giorgio, right?
Mhm.
But
But-
isn't it also a little bit disappointing seeing that she was getting shot multiple times and Saru and Tilly were just kind of standing there helpless? I don't know
I mean,
what I
but
kind
if
of
you were-
expected, but
if you're in a room with Michelle Yeoh and she's gonna kick some ass, wouldn't you also just take a step back and like watch?
oh damn.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Saru does
little
shoot
bit.
his little darty things, and at the end, I wish I'd seen Tilly kick a little ass. I wanted it just a little bit. I understand she just lost like her entire past, present, and future, and everything is new, and she also just crash landed on a ship.
Tilly
So
was off this episode, right?
maybe a little.
Yeah.
I feel like her wits were about her, but I think she's still feeling a little jarred physically about what she could do. Is like the vibe I was getting was like everything is new. I'm the weirdo again. What is
Awkward
going
and
on?
intimidated, and I can't believe that you would jump into the future on this limited crew and still be referred to as ensign. I was
True.
like, didn't she get a promotion at that point?
Hashtag facts right there, Grant.
She'll get there. But I loved every moment that man called her sweetheart. I just wanted to reach through my screen
It
and
was a
punch
good villain.
Zara right in the freaking face. And so at the end, when she smashes him over the head with the bottle, I was like, I wanted that even harder. Like if I was the director,
Oh,
I'd
yeah.
be like, let's do that one more time, but like
With some
even
pokes.
harder. Yeah.
At least she got that moment right, because she did hide behind the bar for most of the fight, or all the fight. And there's some debate going on in the chat, some disappointment with the way Tilly was characterized in this episode as kind of regressing back into the more fearful version of Tilly, the more unsure version. But I think all of that, unfortunately, was somewhat of a detriment to the character in this episode. But I think it was more to feed the idea that Saru's leadership style and Giorgio's leadership or run and gun first style are going to have to, they're at odds, obviously, in this episode, but they're going to have to, Saru and the crew is going to have to learn how to blend those two styles to exist and persist in this new world. And we saw some of that through Tilly. Of course, Tilly was shocked and freaked out like everyone was when they landed in this new universe. But she was even knocked down a few more rungs when Giorgio decided just to rail into her. And what happens after that, you immediately see Saru building her back up in a kind, subtle way. So you have that dynamic, those two styles butting heads. And unfortunately, it did kind of get taken out on Tilly a little bit. Giorgio beating her up and bringing her down, Saru slowly bringing her back up, and then her finding her own, I guess, drive when she decides to knock the bottle over the guy's head. And hopefully we'll see more agency from Tilly like we have in the past coming up.
Well, Mike, I think, oh, go ahead, Mariah.
Oh, I was just going to say, I thought we also saw that glimmer right when they enter the saloon and they all point their guns. And Tilly, one who's like, I'm going to rattle off this obscure Starfleet manual thing and really calm this whole situation down. So you
and then bring up dilithium, right?
And bring up the dilithium. And so she's using, I think, that compromise too, where she's like, oh, I have something of value and I can barter, because I've seen this on the planet, with Giorgio back when they were on like the Klingon planet, right? And they had to sort of deal with all of that in the mercantile there. And then she also knows she can be kind and use the Federation sort of ethos to get what they need.
Which is totally what Saru saw in her, and that's what he was trying to point out. Like, you can handle this.
I think the disappointment is it's a little confusing. Right. And we've seen these glimpses. I mean, look, everybody loves Captain Killy, right? Everybody just loves Captain Killy. But what I keep thinking about is that when first of all, for her to see Captain Killy means that she got a glimpse of who she could be. Right. So she's talked about wanting to be a captain, but to see that she, in another kind of parallel universe, becomes one of the most badass captains in the universe, like that has to do something to your confidence, to the way you see yourself. And then to pretend to be that person convincingly and seeing what happens when you have a little confidence, a little bit of swag. I think it's almost as though we've just forgot that happened. Or she has forgotten that that's happened. And now we're getting a little bit different. And it's this mixing pot of, oh, well, Saru has believed in her and has encouraged her to look to get promoted and to do the officer training. And I think you've got Giorgio over here who's looking like, no, I've seen how badass you can be. I'm going to give you a little bit of tough love and push on you a little bit. And it just doesn't seem like the narrative is that consistent or linear, really. It's kind of swirling around for me a little bit.
I agree with you on some aspects there, Clyde, but I would say she also saw that Killy was a killer and was like capital B bad, and so it's like, if that darkness resides in whatever parallel universe, it's like her trying to counteract that is probably over pushing herself on the goodness side of things. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a fear of the darkness within.
Also, I can rationalize it by thinking I'm never, who among us is really consistent in our character? We can be in life with our challenges, with our shifting environment. I can be a smart person, I can be a competent person, but in certain situations, all that falls away. And we see that a lot with Tilly. And I think the show has set her up as this type of person who is nervous and gets chatty when she's nervous, but also underneath all those tics, or whatever you want to call them, is very competent. So we do see that throughout. I want to talk more about Saru and how he related to the crew in this episode. I think Saru, because I think it's important, I think Saru as acting captain really set the template for how the disco crew is going to interact with this strange new future universe. I think he kind of tried to frame it all so perfectly at the start of this episode. We're in a new place. We're all anxious to learn what is out there, but we're going to face this new universe with intellect and respect and friendship, and we'll try to do no harm to anyone, even if that means not telling them who we are and where we're from, because we have all this information that could potentially damage the future. So like that really just told us the prime directive, first contact rules are kind of still in play. You know, we're still kind of in the Star Trek world.
Right.
So I thought this episode did a great job of framing how this crew is going to exist and move forward in this universe this season. But then it also gave us that added benefit of having Giorgio on the crew being this wild card saying, hey, sometimes you got to come in and just blast some fucking heads. So we're going to see the crew and how this Starfleet crew interacts with the world evolve, which I think is great.
He also said, we want to explore out there and see what's going on out there, but first we need to take care of what's going on in here.
Yeah,
and that seemed like such a good like self-care, self-love kind of thing that has been a recurring discussion topic, I think, for us, of like, these people need to look out for themselves and consider themselves first, and a lot of times they're not doing that. And I thought, like, in a way, he comes across as a very sensitive and compassionate commander, captain, and it's like already being able to pinpoint the differences in what Saru's style is from Pike in approach. Pike would probably have been like, we're sending a team out there while we're taking care of this and this. And like Saru's like, no, we're going to, everyone just take a step back, take a breath, check on, have a buddy, and let's all work together, right? And it was like a very cute approach that Saru had, but also, it's fascinating to just see how that's going to develop as the season goes on.
See, I was struggling with Saru, and I was mixed, because I think early on, as always, especially as captain, because there's this moment at the beginning where everything is going crazy. The ship is about to it's going to be devastated. Kara is saying, "Hey, we can't do this," and he goes, "Recommendations, Lieutenant." And I was like, dude, are you insane? Like, that is not the time to go, anybody got an idea? Like, what do you think? That there are teachable moments in the middle of a crisis. Not one.
But she stepped up, and that was her hero moment, right?
True.
Yes.
Her detriment.
Yeah, I just thought there's probably a faster, more direct method of getting there. And then later on, I see the compassion. I'm going, all right, well, maybe I can see how there's some benefit to him. But then I go back and going, all right, yeah, most seasoned captains would have put, I don't know, some tactical person, some security personnel said, hey, we're going. Like, even, I don't want to call her brace face, but even
Non.
She's like, her? Like, you can't take both of them? Like, in a fight, you want Non with you.
Mm-hmm. I think you hit on something really, really good there, Clyde. You said seasoned. Saru, his leadership style is rooted in compassion, which is what the Federation and Starfleet is all about. But yeah, he hasn't been captain that long. He hasn't been commander that long. He needs a little seasoning. In this episode, I think we saw
That's
him
what Giorgio said.
Get some seasoning.
God.
I'm glad you beat me to it, Clyde.
Because she eats Kelpians. Okay. Did you all enjoy reconnecting with the rest of the crew? Did everybody feel true to character to you in this episode?
Yeah, I'm really interested to see where they're going with Kayla's storyline. Our pilot, she, takes a pretty big tumble over the console. And, I think there is, a couple of possibilities with her character. It's either, a concussion that's kind of going undiagnosed from the medical team, or perhaps it's something with her implant is going wrong.
It's a Rutherford thing, isn't it?
Right. Maybe there's a Rutherford thing happening. But there's also the potential, I joked at the beginning that Leland is still kicking around on Michelle Yeoh's boots, but what if there are some pieces of Control still left? I mean, it could be, I don't really want to revisit Control, but there is the possibility that there's something going on. Perhaps
they made too much of a point of showing it, though, right?
They
It's got to
did.
be
it was
coming
so
back.
much biohazard material. That poor Jean, I've already forgotten your name. It was cleaning up.
Jean is totally going to be also. I bet there's going to be a whole bunch of like active Control units, but only like kind of partially.
Right.
I think if it is Control, it's only going to be Kayla because she has the cybernetic component to her body in which Control can manifest.
To Grant's point, right? And this is why I'm not a huge fan of the previously on, because the previously on almost always telegraphs what's like what they want you to know and what's coming. And I thought it was super awkward that this is a, maybe it's a part 2. I mean, it's I'm considering it a part 2. It's the second episode, but the previously on was all about the finale, right? It was all about and this aspect of the finale that we didn't touch in the premiere. And I'm looking going, well, no, we've already done this. Where are they now? And what happened to them last? Now you're going back and you're getting me all of this Control.
When Control goes, I'll be back to the audience. It's like, oh, that's really heavy-handed, man.
And last week it really was set up that Control is gone, that we're really focused on the burn. We're focused on things. You're about to give me a new big bad. But now it's all about Control. So if it hadn't been for that, then it'd be an interesting surprise. And probably, by episode, 6, we'd all be like, oh! And now I'm like, I see this coming and I don't want it.
It was great getting more for Kayla to do. We're getting more of the smaller characters or the bridge characters that don't do a lot of talking. They're actually doing stuff now. So I thought this episode, just to talk about the reintroduction of the characters, there was great banter, it was great emotional beats for a lot of our characters, really fun, a very deep sense of like where these characters stand with each other was communicated to kind of remind us where their relationships are and who they are to each other. Like Stamets and Culbert, like their dynamic was, I thought, more charged and energetic and interesting than it's been for the entire show. They were just there for each other.
Yeah. And I think, Culbert got to be on the other side of things that normally Stamets is on, right? Because Stamets was the one who was injured. He was not doing really well. He had to be put into a coma. And so I think anytime there is a huge point of, is it healthy that their relationship seems to be based around trauma at this point? Probably not. Do I hope they come to a resolution about that? Absolutely. I loved if you can spell this, you can go. What was it? My husband put me in a coma and all I got was this lousy t-shirt. Like, when is that coming out? I need the shirt.
With the hyphen.
Is there a counselor on the ship?
Not that we've seen.
No,
because they gonna need one. They are definitely gonna need one.
I think Culbert
not
met
allowed
with
to have one.
didn't he?
There's gonna
season.
be.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Culbert might have met with one.
There's
But
a bird. That's a
That's the other show.
that's the other show. But yeah, and I thought I appreciate the Jet Reno character and that it presents a lot of the techno babble with humor, and I find that so much more digestible.
Tig Notaro, like, thank God Jet Reno made the trip to the future. Tig Notaro on this show is such a gift. Like,
oh man,
she just amazingly like makes everything feel grounded and funny with her quip and her attitude, even when she's spouting the most like nonsensical techno babble any Trek fan has ever heard.
Oh,
like,
everyone knows that like wormholes are like G-force like times 10 or whatever.
I mean,
it's just like, okay.
Oh, perfect.
I wanted to see how many people were going to say EPS conduit in one show.
Yeah. It sucks that I was listening to the Pod Directive, the official Star Trek podcast. The latest episode had an interview with Tig, which is amazing. Her and Paula Tompkins. And Tig is not going to be in every episode this season, unfortunately. She's like, I'll be around. I'll be gone for maybe 3 or 4 episodes and I'll pop back in. And she's like, that's the way I like it. That's what I want to do on this show. I love this show, but I don't want to be in Vancouver all year.
Well,
Toronto.
Toronto, yeah.
I just want to say kudos to the Star Trek team for handing out SAG cards like they were
So many
coupons.
random speaking parts. Yeah.
Random
True.
people. We've gone 2 seasons with like the same 8 people talking, and all of a sudden you got people showing up for almost no reason. Like, did you call me? Were you looking for me?
Clyde,
No, I wasn't looking for you. Okay.
It's season 3 of The Office, right? All of a sudden, all the background characters are talking, and it's
Mhm.
great.
Mhm.
Man, we talked recently. I already did this plug at the beginning of our episode where I said that we just discussed Star Trek Beyond on our Patreon. Hey, patreon.com/Star Trek Pod. But there's a scene in that movie that I was talking about where it's so heavy handed because every single character in that like takes a turn like formulating a little piece of the puzzle of this master plan of how they're going to defeat the big bad Idris Elba at the end of the movie. That movie's stupid, by the way. But there's a scene at the very beginning of this episode where everyone's where the ship's about to crash onto the planet and Saru is running point, and you have all of those characters who, like Clyde said, for 2 years had not even had speaking roles that were chiming in with different ideas, and the conversation was going back and forth, and Saru was point man, like pinging ideas off of everyone. It felt very naturally conversational and like strong leadership, whereas that other scene just felt like movie hokiness to me. And I was just like, that is when a leader on a ship can direct everyone and bring their feedback and make crucial decisions at a crucial time.
Hey, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
We're in a down economy. It's hard out there on people. You don't know when
They
these
got
acting
some
gigs.
insurance.
You know what I'm saying? Like there's like a lot of people at home. So
Hand out them lines.
I'm just saying, if you have an opportunity to give somebody some insurance, some health care,
Right.
get them some SAG membership, then hey, Kurtzman, I applaud you for taking care of people.
And he is taking care of people because
it didn't take away from the show, right? To Grant's point,
It's not
the ensign or whatever who showed up talking to Tig, talking about, hey, did you call for help? And she's like, no. That didn't exactly enrich the show, but
they needed someone to be able to go run and get Culbert. That's like the whole reason.
Comms were down. Internal comms were down.
Yeah. So they needed someone to come and bug Tig in order for them to go get Culbert, because with her back, she was not running anywhere.
Right. And that was great keeping her there with Stamets because their dynamic is amazing.
Yes.
And so fun. And she is always butting heads with him, but even she was really concerned about him going up to do this, wiggle into Jeffrey's too, because he's fucked up. And totally going against what Saru told everyone. Let's take care of ourselves before we go out and venture and push ourselves. And of course, that's what Stamets does. So that was so true to character.
He's so stubborn.
And I thought she had such a great line that I thought was really like something that was just nice to hear right now, where it was like something along the lines of like, helplessness is not forever. It's just a feeling and it doesn't like limit your potential, something along those lines. But it was like a nice thing where it was like, right, like you can feel helpless in a moment and ask for help. It doesn't make you a bad person.
Well, and I love that.
Stamets is like, nah.
Well, see, here's what I loved about Stamets.
I can do it.
It felt a little familiar because I was thinking, oh, look at this. We're in the future. We're far, far in the future. And far from home. And male stupidity is still a thing.
Yep.
That's good to know.
The ego is still there.
We're not
never dies.
We're not gonna just get rid of all of the stupid things. But I was like, dude.
Speaking of male stupidity, Clyde, you kept referring to him as a potential big bad. But I really did. I found the Tim Rothian evil courier in this episode, Zara.
Tim Rothian.
Yeah, he's played by an actor named Jake Weber, who I hope returns to the show someday. I found him to be a really credible threat. Like, he was really good in the role. He was like not only credible as this dangerous threat, but his character also kind of filled in the gaps about the whole courier culture of the new universe.
Mhm.
Like we learned about how the couriers work and how they can effectively become like these kind of ruthless overlords over these colonies, like Immortan Joe in
Right.
Mad Max, like controlling all the resources and gaining their power through that force. That was cool.
And
Yeah.
it was a good callback to Book's character and
Yeah.
his relationship with the other smuggler slash courier
Mhm.
that he had a bad run-in with.
Yeah,
Um,
that actor is from Homeland. He had a pretty significant arc on Showtime's Homeland as a kind of a alt-right podcast, like TV show personality, and so he's really good.
I didn't know
at-
those existed.
Yeah, at
What are you talking
playing-
about?
But he knows how to play this depth of kind of almost noble, crazy, like evil really well. And so, I mean, having seen his work, I'm under no illusion that we've seen him for the last time.
Yeah.
I would love to have him back.
Yeah,
He
for
was
sure.
great.
Yeah.
Do we want to dive into some of these comments?
Oh, well, I had one other thing I was going to bring up, which was Zara uses the term Vidrash for the, or whatever you pronounce it, for the Federation, which the only other time we've heard that is in the short trek Calypso.
One of my favorite short treks,
which is a great short trek. And so, that was after the ship had been abandoned for 1,000 years. And so that's anyway, I'm just very interested in where the timelines line up. All right, Mike, I'm glad you don't want to listen to what
Mike
I have to
didn't
say.
care. He was like, I'm done with that.
got something for you, Mike. You just gonna leave us here? That's fine. Whatever.
He's
Yeah,
We don't
disappeared.
need you, Mike.
Yeah, I had a question for you two.
Mhm.
Is Reese the number? Is it number one now? Is that the first officer? Is Reese the first
Who's
officer? Because
Reese?
when Saru,
The lieutenant, who's usually at weapons, I believe.
yeah, he
Hey.
and Mike's back.
Hey, welcome back, Mike. We missed you. We couldn't do this without you.
Internet problems.
And Mike, maybe you have some insight on this as well. I was just asking them: is Reese the new first officer? Because when Saru leaves the bridge, he puts Reese in charge. He's like, Reese, take over Take over
Con.
The con.
control. Yeah. Okay. And
But
I was
he-
like, oh, maybe he's the
Con?
second in charge.
But he leaves Nan in charge of the overall ship repairs.
yeah, but isn't she kind of like Shax? Like she's head of security.
I'm not. I mean,
I'm still trying to learn what
So-
all the roles
so
I
are.
don't think
here-
Nan has a designation yet because she
Right.
was on the Enterprise and she just hopped
Mhm.
over at the end of last season.
So the thing about it is, whoever has the con is first of all, it can literally be anybody on the bridge.
So you think Nan has the con?
No.
No.
What I'm saying is, when the officer on deck
Come on,
leaves
Dr.
the
Seuss, play
bridge,
along.
right? Or whoever's the officer who has the watch, when they leave the bridge,
Mhm.
they can designate almost anybody else in that room, usually the highest ranking member in that room, as you've got the bridge, you've got the con. It doesn't mean that it's the XO, the executive officer, the number one, because that person just may not be in the room. So it's hard to know who is the most senior officer on the ship, not just the bridge at that time.
Because Saru was the number one to
Mhm.
Pike on the ship at the time, co-acting captains was sort of how they approached
Yes.
it. So the chain of command is very blurry at this point.
And it would have
For
been
sure.
potentially like Burnham, probably.
What you're
but-
looking for is you're looking for a lieutenant commander. You're
Mhm.
looking for that. That's the rank that you're looking for the next person, the XO of the ship, right? And the interesting thing about it is that is the commander is still Saru's rank. So I know I'm getting way into geeky. Anyway,
That's why we're here, my friend.
just
Diving into some of these comments, Chris Rogers says of Tilly, you can be strong and have setbacks in that strength at the most significant loss of your life. And that makes perfect sense. Yeah, Tilly not only lost her world, her time, she lost her friend, Michael.
Right. I mean, I don't think it was inconsistent in the writing so much as it was just it was a different take on her character from where I thought we had seen her kind of been built up. But in the context of a ship crashing, losing her relationship with her mother, who it was toxic, but it
For
was
better
still a
or for worse.
relationship.
Mhm.
Yeah, forever. And everyone else outside of that ship that they had known. It's okay for all of them to be kind of undergoing a little bit of trauma here.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that it was a different character to a degree, that she was babbling and nervous and uncomfortable rather than having a bit of that swagger, I guess.
Very true. All right. What else do you guys have to say in the comments?
Ooh, let's see what
Oh,
they
yeah.
have to say.
Kern is reminding us that there's no counselor on Discovery, obviously, because everybody's fucked. But last season, the reason we remember Culbert talking to somebody is because he talked with Cornwell, because she used to be a counselor.
She's got that counselor background.
Now she did.
Counselors are the new red shirt, apparently. If you become a counselor, you're just gonna get killed. Don't do it. Chris Rogers says this is tiny and nothing, but Reno did mention Knee Plus Ultra, which is the apex or highest aspect, and a bad guy did mention Nadir, the lowest point, in a span of a minute or two.
Right.
Science references. There's another super nerdy reference in the title cards. Are y'all familiar with the Einstein-Rosen bridge?
Yeah.
Excellent.
No,
Not enough to explain it to anyone, but
Anyway,
Yeah.
apparently
I mean,
there
I
is-
know, of course, but for people who don't, can you explain it?
Yes. So it is essentially that you can time travel using a wormhole, and there is a diagram of that in towards the end of the opening credits of Discovery.
There's also a new little robot that shows up in the opening credits. It looks
Yeah,
like
there's
Eve from
A few
Wall-E.
little differences.
and it's with Stamets when he's in that Jeffries tube. Why it was not helping him, I don't know, but it was
Oh.
in there.
That was like a floating camera. Wasn't
Do
it?
you guys
Is that
think
what it
that
is?
Jet Reno is going to die and her voice is going to live on inside of that robot?
I hope
No,
not.
I want to see Tig.
No.
Yeah, I want Tig. I also thought it was.
It's a terrible idea.
I was going somewhere with a fun science reference, and now I've lost it. Anyway, doesn't
Bring
matter.
back the science.
Here's another thing I want to point out and potentially bitch about. How many people were on Discovery when they decided to go through a wormhole into the future? Because I was under the impression from the other episode that it was maybe about like
8 of
12 to 20
Yeah.
people, right?
Mm.
It's a whole lot of
it was
people
80
now.
But
88.
that ship is massive, and when Saru is just kind of sauntering around the hallways, everyone was in that one hallway. Like everyone was up.
They
and
sent
down
out a
there.
mass email. If you want to stay, stay. If you want to go to
Go.
the Enterprise. Everybody opted to stay.
I mean, they ended up saying there's like 88 people, right?
88 people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's a lot more people than I thought stayed on.
But
there.
but
Me
here,
too.
here's
Yeah.
the thing that I appreciate though. I appreciate that when that ship with all 88 people crash landed, I was so thankful that it didn't skid to the edge of a cliff because I feel like that happens all the time. And
Instead,
I was like,
it was just parasitic ice.
parasitic ice. I mean, I'll take something a little bit novel than the same old, hey, we're teetering on the edge of a cliff, which also happened in that movie that Grant doesn't like.
It's true.
You like parts of the movie.
To be fair, I think that happened in all of those movies, right?
It happens in all of them.
In
Did-
all of them.
It's a
Did
trope.
y'all get I got like oddly emotional watching this for the first time through when the Discovery was crashing. Like it felt very similar to me like the first time I saw the Enterprise crash.
Mhm.
I didn't get emotional. I just kept thinking, damn, they take these really cool ships and crash them into planets like way too frequently.
I got to say, on that note, last week when we saw Michael Burnham hit the ground and get hurt and, complain about her back and stuff, like in this episode, I felt the physical crash of the ship way more than just watching Michael Burnham. For some reason, it just felt so visceral, and watching Kayla fly over the con and hurt herself, and watching Jet Reno screw up her back and everybody be tossed around the ship. Like that's a trope of Star Trek, right? Oh, the ship's moving
Where are
and
the
we're going to
seatbelts?
crash. Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
At some
But-
point, there should be seatbelts.
But in this episode, it felt real.
Well, I think, Mike, part of that is that you were under no illusion whatsoever that they were going to kill Michael Burnham, right?
Mm, mm.
Like it didn't matter how hard she hit that dirt. You knew she was popping back up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
When that ship crashed, I'll be
You don't know
honest,
who's going.
I didn't know who. I was like, oh man, Kayla is done.
The
Plus, all the
tension
shots
was
of
real.
them, it seems like they were dead already before they
Yeah.
went. Like as they were going through
Like
it.
I'm surprised we didn't lose anybody. Like I really thought there was gonna be like somebody that you know and love was out. But again, Kurtzman making sure people got that health care. Love it, man.
I got
wanted to- go ahead.
great comment here from Chris Rogers. He says, overall, it already feels like the writers are feeling confident and emboldened by removing the timeline constraints for the most part. It feels like a new show with a sure and steady energy. I will say I agree with that after watching this episode for sure.
I just want to say, give it up to Chris Rogers, the fifth member of the podcast.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say I watched the Ready Room for this episode that Will Wheaton hosts. It's very Will Wheaton-y, and he loves Tilly so much. But they had a really good interview with Mary Wiseman and Doug Jones, kind of talking about the relationship of those two characters throughout this series. And then they also talked about particularly filming all of the crashing for this episode. Because when you're an actor, everything is still. The camera is moving and you have to act like everything is moving. So a director is just yelling at you, left, right, left. And like Tilly was saying that she feels like she has, or Mary Wiseman was saying she has an advantage because she has that giant ponytail. And she's like, my ponytail really does a lot of the acting for me. You just get it flying and it looks like we're going bananas.
Oh, the courier in this episode, he was like, yeah, let's kill her and cut off her hair. We can trade it at the market.
We can sell
Well,
that thing.
I was
I
like,
mean-
is this like Miz? Like what year is this?
So first of all, I don't know. I'm just thinking about the idea of Will Wheaton and Mary Wiseman / Tilly and Wesley Crusher for a moment.
Move on, my friend.
And then I gotta say, it's this weird sexual tension in that saloon, because everybody's eyeing Tilly a bit like a piece of meat. Even Zara's looking at her like, I don't know, maybe
I
I can
felt
keep
like
you around.
a
like,
little
stop
chemistry
projecting.
between
not.
Cal and Tilly. Like when they're sitting there and she's like all amazed at like him rebuilding the structure with the programmable matter. And then, you know, at one point he's like, do you think I have what it takes to be Starfleet? You know, you felt like a little spark that was quickly crushed by
True.
the big bads.
True.
That is 2 episodes in a row where you have the person who is really in awe of and wants to be a part of Starfleet. Because in the first episode, we have the communication guy at the very end who's in his own little bubble, and Burnham promotes him to being, you are a Starfleet officer now. And then, and correct me if I'm wrong about it being an officer, I don't know rank or whatever, but here you can see this kind of glimmer of hope that this guy could also potentially be an officer. It's like the end of the 8th Star Wars movie where any kid could potentially be a Jedi, right?
Right.
And then
I
they
like
said,
that.
"Yeah, forget that."
and again, in the last episode, the character who was a great character, and I like the way we were introduced to him, the guy who Michael like makes an officer, he just wanted to be a Starfleet officer or believed in the Federation because of his ancestry, right? His father, his grandfather before him. And it kind of felt like he was just already into it in a vacuum. This guy that we saw knew about the Federation, knew that it could be good, and then he saw them show up, and he was inspired by the way they tried to help. And that I thought was a much more potent characterization of someone being inspired by the Federation. Oh, I'm looking at it and it's changing my life. I want to be a part of it.
Right.
It's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're gonna get that in a number of episodes, because what I hope that we're seeing is the genesis of the new Federation.
Right.
And we're going to see people all over the galaxy who are still believing and who are going to be part of that next generation of Starfleet officers.
Hell yeah. Okay, I think we are good.
Hold up, Mike.
uh-oh,
One thing I
uh-oh.
wanted to bring up. Probably one of my favorite parts of this episode. There is this suiting up of Saru and Tilly in this badass moment of we're gonna go into the world and we're Star Trek Discovery. We're gonna go explore this new world, right? And the door opens, and then Saru just sachets out. And it's like whoop 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 whoop. Like Tilly's doing the badass walk, and he's like,
That's how he walks. He's an alien.
I
Yes.
loved it so much.
That arm swing. I was literally thinking the arm swinging behind the back. That's got to be a little uncomfortable.
That's a choice.
It was so
That
good.
is a choice.
Yeah, I in the ready room they talked about filming on the like rocky beaches, on these cliffs, and on glaciers. And in a lot of those scenes, he has to still wear the hoof shoes because if his feet are ever visible, he has to be wearing those. And then if he isn't, like if the feet aren't visible, they put him in platform, like giant platform boots essentially. And he said they were filming this one portion where they have to walk from the edge of a cliff forward for the shot. And so he's in his like little hoof boots. And apparently Mary Wiseman was very concerned the whole time.
Oh, no.
And he has to take like a steadying walk before the camera starts, and he gets a little wobbly at first, and she was just like freaking out the whole time.
He's a
Well,
professional.
let's sashay our way out of this podcast just like Saru. Thank you so much for joining us on the pod this week. Remember, you can find us live on YouTube every Thursday talking about Trek, of course, talking about Discovery Season 3, 9 p.m. Central every single week. And we'll be covering Disco through the entire season. And you can also download the podcast, even if you watch this live pod, even if you find this live pod, you're watching a replay on YouTube. We need you to download that podcast. So just go to StarTrekPod.co. You can find us on Apple. You can find us anywhere and just download that podcast.
Subscribe.
Do it. And leave us a 5-star rating if you can, especially on Apple Podcasts. It helps other people find the pod. And I know, shout out to all our Canadian fans out there that you don't get to join us live on Thursdays anymore because you can't watch it till Fridays. So please join us on the audio version or on the rewatch on YouTube. But if you can, leave us that 5-star rating on Apple Podcast.
And I know we're hitting the end, which is a little sad. You guys are all thinking, oh man, I'm not going to see these guys for another week. Oh no, my friend. You can join us for more if you go to patreon.com/Star Trek Pod and become a patron of our show. Give us $2 an episode and join our exclusive Slack channel where you can chat with us all day long. All about Trek, baby. Star Trek. That's patreon.com/Star Trek Pod.
Hey, and I just want to say, do you even tweet, bro? Do you tweet, bro? Because if you do, make sure you let people know. Tweet about the episode. Tweet about the show. Are you on IG? Let people know so you can get at us on Twitter and Instagram. We're at Star Trek Pod. Share the love. And I just want to say shout out to Karen, who runs our Twitter, and James Worm, who runs our Insta. Thanks, James. Thanks, Karen. Couldn't do it without you.
All right. Thanks to everybody again for joining us on the pod tonight. Mariah, where can we find you on the internets?
Yes, I am at Mariah Gossett on all social platforms. That's Mariah with a Y and a Gossett with 2 S's and 2 T's.
Clyde.
I never get that right. I am at Clyde Haynes. You can hit me up on Twitter or find me on the web at www.keyandclyde.com. That's KEI and Clyde.com.
Grant.
Right here. Oh, I always get that right.
You
Clyde.
do get it right.
Look at that.
I know.
I had practice once you said that. At Bearman Grant.
Mike Moody Garcia on Twitter and on the Insta. Thanks for listening. Live long and prosper.